I was wrongly killed, and God said He would reward me with another life. Reborn, I became the daughter of a billionaire and a famous director. And the woman who had caused my miserable death was still relentlessly bullying me. I smiled, since heaven had given me a second chance. This time, I would make her pay slowly. 1. As soon as I reached the dorm door, I heard a mocking voice from inside. What's wrong with using her desk? She tried to end her life by cutting her wrists. She might as well be dead already. I'm doing her a favor by not being disgusted by a dead person's desk. My body trembled violently, and my fingers twitched slightly. This voice, I was too familiar with it. Grace, a sophomore in the literature department. The woman who had spread rumors about me in my previous life, and ultimately caused my tragic death. I took a deep breath, suppressing my hatred, and opened the dorm door. Grace's voice continued, pretending to be so high and mighty all the time. You really think you're a rich girl? Those clothes are just cheap stuff from the roadside. Don't try to fool me. The clothes I was wearing were indeed not from any big brand, but a brand created by my godmother. From the fabric to the design, it was top-notch. Only someone as clueless as Grace would think it was bought from a roadside stall. Evelyn, a short-haired girl inside, looked at me excitedly. She came over and took my hand, her eyes reddening when she saw the bandage on my wrist. Evelyn, you're okay? I had wanted to wear long sleeves, but it was September, and it would be too hot. Haha, so you really tried to end your life by cutting your wrists? Grace looked at me mockingly. You're really lucky to be alive. I looked at her, my eyes filled with suppressed hatred. Yeah, God said I had too many good deeds in my previous life and shouldn't die. But you better be careful, or you might be the one with a short life. In my previous life, I wasn't Evelyn. I was just an ordinary college student. Just because I won the student council election and got one more vote than Grace, she saw me as a thorn in her side. In the end, in a hot summer, I was framed by Grace and suffocated to death in a small storage room. Perhaps God felt sorry for me, so He gave me a second chance, allowing me to properly repay those who had harmed me. How dare you curse me? Grace's eyes bulged with anger, and she raised her hand to hit me. I grabbed Grace's wrist and slapped her hard. The sound of the slap was particularly crisp in the quiet dormitory. Grace looked at me in disbelief and tried to pounce on me, but I pressed her shoulders down hard. Although Evelyn was a rich girl, she had been learning martial arts since she was a child, and she was proficient in boxing and other martial arts. If I really wanted to, 10 Graces wouldn't be enough. Grace, this is just the beginning of my revenge. I will make her pay for everything she has done to me. 2. As soon as we entered the cafeteria, I heard a mocking voice from inside. What's wrong with using her desk? She tried to end her life by cutting her wrists. She might as well be dead already. I'm doing her a favor by not being disgusted by a dead person's desk. My body trembled violently, and my fingers twitched slightly. This voice was all too familiar. Grace, a sophomore in the literature department. The woman who had spread rumors about me in my previous life, and ultimately caused my tragic death. I took a deep breath, suppressing my hatred, and opened the dorm door. Grace's voice continued, pretending to be so high and mighty all the time. You really think you're a rich girl? Those clothes are just cheap stuff from the roadside. Don't try to fool me. The clothes I was wearing were indeed not from any big brand, but a brand created by my godmother. Only someone as clueless as Grace would think it was bought from a roadside stall. Evelyn, a short-haired girl inside, looked at me excitedly. She came over and took my hand, her eyes reddening when she saw the bandage on my wrist. Evelyn, you're okay? I had wanted to wear long sleeves, but it was September, and it would be too hot. Haha, so you really tried to end your life by cutting your wrists? Grace looked at me mockingly. You're really lucky to be alive. I looked at her, my eyes filled with suppressed hatred. Yeah, God said I had too many good deeds in my previous life and shouldn't die. But you better be careful, or you might be the one with a short life. In my previous life, I wasn't Evelyn. I was just an ordinary college student. Just because I won the student council election and got one more vote than Grace, she saw me as a thorn in her side. In the end, in a hot summer, I was framed by Grace and suffocated to death in a small storage room. Perhaps God felt sorry for me, So he gave me a second chance, allowing me to properly repay those who had harmed me. How dare you curse me? Grace's eyes bulged with anger, and she raised her hand to hit me. I grabbed Grace's wrist and slapped her hard. The sound of the slap was particularly crisp in the quiet dormitory. Grace looked at me in disbelief and tried to pounce on me, but I pressed her shoulders down hard. Although Evelyn was a rich girl, she had been learning martial arts since she was a child, and she was proficient in boxing and other martial arts. If I really wanted to, 10 Graces wouldn't be enough. Grace, this is just the beginning of my revenge. I will make her pay for everything she has done to me. 3. On the way back, I asked about the past indirectly. When I was reborn, my parents had held my hand and asked if I had been wronged at school. From them, I learned that Evelyn was an extremely kind and gentle person, coupled with her illustrious background and brilliant life. How could such a girl end her own life? But Amelia seemed extremely afraid to mention this, and stammered out an incoherent answer. She just held my hand and said fearfully, "Evelyn, Grace is more terrifying than you think. She killed someone. So please let's not provoke her anymore, okay?" Seeing Amelia's fear, a guess popped into my mind. Could Evelyn's suicide have something to do with Grace? Amelia grabbed my hand and added in a low voice, "There was also a freshman girl, and when her body was found, it was already stinking." This matter was quickly suppressed, and I only overheard Grace and Mia talking about it. Yeah, I was forgotten by Grace in the storage room until my body rotted and the smell came out. And then I was discovered. I squeezed my hand tightly and smiled at her. "It's okay, I will." "Evelyn." A handsome boy walked over from a distance, wearing familiar clothes. Not only that, but for some reason, my body instinctively felt a sense of fear. "It's great. You haven't replied to my messages for so many days. I thought something happened to you." The boy wanted to excitedly grab my hand, his eyes filled with a terrifying emotion that I couldn't understand. "Evelyn, forget about the past, okay? Let's get along well in the future." There was too much information at once, and I quickly absorbed it. According to the boy's angry tone, I looked at him coldly with indifference. "There's nothing to say. I have something else to do. I'll go first." I pulled Amelia away quickly, and beads of sweat appeared on Amelia's forehead. She looked at me uncertainly. "Evelyn, are you finally going to break up with Daniel?" "Daniel? Evelyn's boyfriend?" I recalled the boy just now. He was indeed somewhat handsome, but he had a small-minded air about him, and there was no way a wealthy heiress would fall for him. Forget it. Wealthy heiresses are the easiest to be deceived by poor men. Seeing that I didn't speak, Amelia felt sorry for me. "This Daniel, he eats your food and wears your clothes, and he doesn't treat you well, and he secretly gets together with Grace behind your back. I've warned you many times, and finally you're going to dump him." No wonder the clothes on Daniel were so familiar. It turned out to be the same brand as mine. Secretly getting together with Grace? Did Evelyn end her life because of this? Full of doubts, I returned to the dormitory. As soon as I entered the door, a basin of water was splashed on me. I was instantly soaked. Looking inside, Grace had returned first and was standing there laughing maliciously. Mia was holding the basin and raised her eyebrows at me triumphantly. "Sorry, I was cleaning, and I didn't know you would come back suddenly." I didn't say anything and went straight to my closet. The doorknob had been touched, and when I opened it, sure enough, all the clothes inside were destroyed. Some had a big hole cut in them, and some were cut in half. I searched for a long time, but I couldn't find a single piece of clothing that I could wear. I turned to look at Mia and Grace, who were pretending to be busy, and asked coldly, "Who did this?" "Oh, your cheap clothes have been cut." Grace sneered and poked Mia next to her. Mia echoed, "Oh, how would I know? I went out after you left, and I forgot to close the door. I guess someone saw you wearing such rags and wanted to get revenge." Grace laughed even harder. "Anyway, it's not worth anything. Just buy new ones." "What's wrong? Don't you have any money?" She put her foot in front of me and said to me in a very insulting tone, "Lick my shoes clean, and I'll give you 10 pieces of clothing, all brand names. How about that?" I was about to get angry when Amelia pulled me back and said softly, "Evelyn, if you don't mind, you can wear my clothes." Take a shower first, or you'll catch a cold. Grace was even happier. It's the same, you two poor people, neither of you dislikes the other. I looked at Grace coldly. I remember your mother is just an ordinary middle school teacher, and your father, at most, earns about 50,000 yuan a month. All your brand name clothes, did you get them through embezzlement or bribery? You know it yourself. Grace's face changed. I took Amelia's clothes and smiled gratefully at her, then turned to Grace. If I were you, I would keep a low profile. Otherwise, someone will report you, and if you really get investigated, you won't have anywhere to cry. After saying that, I went into the bathroom. After taking a shower, I went to the classroom. There was only one elective class today, and it was in the evening. Evelyn. As soon as I went downstairs, a strange man with a mask pulled me. I was startled, and the man pulled down his mask slightly. My dear father. 4. Evelyn, what on earth is going on? My father scanned me from head to toe. I pursed my lips. It's just a few complications. My father's face turned red with anger. Your advisor just called me, saying you've been bullying a classmate. I couldn't sit still and had to come over. What exactly happened? Who would dare to mess with my daughter? I briefly explained the situation. Before, our family wasn't influential, so I didn't dare to worry my parents. But now things were different. It would be foolish not to use the connections we had. My father's face darkened. No, you can't stay in that dorm. I'll find you an apartment. And that Grace, daring to ask you to apologize? She's delusional. I silently gave my father a thumbs up. In the end, I missed my elective class because my father was so worried and took me straight home. When we got home, we immediately had a family meeting. My impulsive father slapped the table and sneered. She thinks she can get away with it? Tomorrow I'll take Evelyn to confront her. What are you going to do? My wealthy mother was even more impulsive. She's just the daughter of a school principal. Tomorrow I'll get her father fired. Seeing my parents, I felt a warm feeling in my heart. Then I calmed them down. Mom, Dad, I want to handle this myself. After all, this was a personal vendetta. And besides, Evelyn's death seemed suspicious. Now that I had a second chance at life, I had to find out what really happened. My parents disagreed, but I quickly reassured them. But Mom, Dad, she's really too arrogant. Over the next few days, you can work on collecting evidence of her father's corruption. Once she loses her support, she won't be so arrogant. My father and wealthy mother were finally satisfied, but they couldn't help but ask, "Are you sure you'll be okay?" I nodded firmly. Don't worry, I'm not a helpless lamb. I didn't go back to the dorm. My father rented a 3-bedroom apartment for me. And because I felt lonely, I invited Amelia to live with me. Amelia was naturally happy to agree, because once I left, those two in the dorm would definitely bully her. The next evening, my advisor came to me with Grace. Grace was still as arrogant as ever, certain that the advisor was here to reprimand me. But the advisor changed his tone, becoming sincere, and begged me to be lenient and not report him to the Education Bureau. Grace's expression froze, and she looked at the advisor in shock. What do you mean? Why are you begging her? What's she got? The advisor ignored her and looked at me pleadingly. Evelyn, please. I calmly asked, so what about my punishment? The advisor's voice was almost begging. Evelyn, you won't be punished. Nothing will happen. It was my mistake, and I apologize. Grace looked incredulous. Are you crazy? It was clearly Evelyn's fault. The advisor stammered and couldn't say anything, only lowering his head. I didn't bother arguing with her. My wealthy mother was petty. Even if she apologized, losing her teaching position was an inevitable fact. From now on, I wouldn't see her at school. As for Grace, I smiled faintly at her. Grace, don't you like to compare your social status? Well, this time, let's have a good comparison. Grace was stunned, and I turned and left. She glared at the timid advisor, furious. Are you trying to lose your job? I'll tell my dad. The advisor interrupted her. Grace, Evelyn's connections are more powerful than you think. Grace's eyes were filled with disdain. What connections could she have? Did she sleep her way to the top? You're such a coward to be afraid of her. The advisor had a bitter expression on his face and didn't dare to say anything. He knew he was finished. After leaving school, I went home and lay on the soft sofa, looking at Amelia beside me, and asked, "Amelia, can you tell me everything about my past?" Amelia was surprised. "Evelyn, did you lose your memory?" I mumbled. "I hit my head, and some of my memories are fuzzy." Amelia nodded and told me about Evelyn's past. Evelyn was a very kind person and had always been good to Amelia. She also got along well with her classmates except for Grace. "Was there ever a day when I acted strange?" "Once," Amelia said. "It was at the end of last semester. You went out with Daniel, and you came back very late, and you didn't talk much for a few days after that. I don't know what happened after that because it was summer vacation." "The end of the semester? When exactly was it?" "Around early July." Amelia scratched her head. "I was particularly sensitive to this number. That was the time I was killed by Grace. That night, I couldn't sleep almost all night. I went through all the data on Evelyn's phone, and finally my eyes fell on a transfer record. Half a month ago, a large sum of money, 1 million, was transferred to an unknown account. I tossed and turned until 6 o'clock before I fell asleep. The next morning, I had only the 3rd and 4th classes, and after that, I dragged Amelia to the cafeteria. "Is it really Director Matthew?" "Of course, Grace even got his autograph." "Wow, the principal's daughter has privileges." "My dad came to school. No wonder I didn't see Grace all morning. It turned out she went to see my father." It made sense. Although my father wasn't a big star, the movies he directed were top-notch, and he was also very handsome. If he wasn't so indifferent to acting, he would definitely be a top actor in the entertainment industry. I rolled my eyes and received a WeChat message. "Evelyn, let's have lunch together." Followed by a location, a high-end restaurant near us. I apologized to Amelia and went to the restaurant from the west gate. I followed the waiter to the private room and saw Grace sitting beside my father, looking shy. "Brother Matthew, my father said you can use the school's facilities, and it's a good opportunity to promote our school." Her voice was so coquettish that it was almost dripping. I shivered in disgust and pushed open the door. When Grace saw me, her expression immediately turned to disgust. "Why are you here?" Realizing something was wrong, she quickly looked at my father and smiled sweetly. "Brother Matthew, this is my former roommate. She doesn't like me and even hit me last time. She's probably here too." My father ignored her and waved to me gently. "Evelyn, come here. I've ordered all your favorite dishes." "Brother Matthew, you and her." Grace couldn't believe it. I rolled my eyes. "Brother?" She should be calling him uncle. Although my father looked young, at first glance, he looked only about 30 years old, the most mature and charming time for a man. But we couldn't ignore the fact that he was already 46, which made him more like an uncle. "Aren't you leaving?" I sneered at Grace. "Or do you want to interrupt our little world?" Grace glared at me fiercely and left unwillingly. I sat next to my father and couldn't help but ask, "Dad, did you sign an autograph for her?" My father nodded. "I just wanted to see what the person who bullied my daughter looked like." I couldn't help but laugh. "Dad, she doesn't understand your meaning. I think she wants to be my stepmother." My father looked disgusted. "She's so fake. She's nothing like your mother." I completely agreed. 6. After lunch, my dad had to go back to filming. He would be shooting in this area for the next 2 months. As for my wealthy mom, well, she was busy gathering evidence. My afternoon classes were packed, and I chose a seat at the back. As soon as I opened my book, I heard whispers from nearby. "Is that her? She's disgusting. Matthew could be her father, yet she's shamelessly flirting with him. I heard that Matthew is actually married. Evelyn is a homewrecker." I looked around, and the girls who had been gossiping immediately shut up. I opened my phone and sure enough, the trending search was blowing up. Hashtag Matthew cheating, hashtag college student, hashtag Jenda University Arts Department. There were a few photos attached, showing me and my dad walking out of a restaurant, looking quite intimate. I closed my phone and looked at Grace behind me. She gave me a provocative smile, looking very pleased with herself. I wanted to laugh. Was Grace an idiot? Spreading rumors about me and my own father. She was really something. After class, I grabbed Amelia and left. But as soon as we stepped out of the building, we were stopped. "Daniel, Evelyn's current boyfriend." "Evelyn, What's going on between you and Matthew? Daniel shouted loudly, and everyone around us turned to look. He lunged forward to grab me, but Amelia immediately stood in front of me. My hands were still shaking uncontrollably. In that moment, I was finally certain that Daniel had something to do with Evelyn's death. Otherwise, my body wouldn't react to him so strongly. What does it have to do with you? I asked Daniel. We're dating, and you're cheating on me. And Matthew is so much older than you. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? My business with Matthew is none of your concern. And from now on, we're over. I grabbed Amelia and walked forward quickly. Daniel kept chasing after me, shouting all sorts of insults. Ah! Amelia screamed suddenly. I turned around and saw that Daniel had grabbed her. Seeing me stop, Daniel caught up with me and grabbed my hair, his eyes wild with anger. Evelyn, you dared to cheat on me. You have to give me an explanation. I winced in pain, but before I could retaliate, a strong fist slammed into him. I saw my father's worried face. Evelyn, are you okay? I shook my head and then looked at Amelia. I'm fine. My father nodded and kicked Daniel again. You're so young and you don't know how to behave. As a man, I despise those who hit women. Daniel covered his hand and howled, glaring at my father. Why did you hit me? Because Evelyn is my precious daughter. Dad, even though that's true, it's easy for people to misunderstand when you say it like that. Sure enough, another hot search about me blew up. This time, it came with videos and even my personal information. There was even a small account that posted evidence. I know this Evelyn. Even though she dresses poorly, her necklaces and jewelry are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. She must have been kept as a mistress. And I heard that Evelyn and the guy in the video have been dating for many years. The guy spent a lot of money on her, but he was so pathetic to be cheated on. I clicked on the profile of that small account, and there was nothing there, but the IP address was here. I didn't need to investigate to know it was probably Grace who did it. In the class chat and the school chat group, the discussion about me was escalating. Is that Evelyn from the interior design class? My God, she's shameless. Flirting with Matthew. She must want to be an actress. She's so desperate. Hey, I'm in the same class as her. She used to be so clingy with her boyfriend. At the end of last semester, I saw them cuddling in the teaching building. How could things change so quickly? Her boyfriend is in our class, and he's very popular with girls. The only downside is that he doesn't have much money, and looking at Evelyn, she's clearly a gold digger. As expected, it was the same as in my previous life. They never cared about the truth, nor did they care about the harm their words could cause to a girl. They would just sit behind their keyboards and start attacking anyone indiscriminately. I directly sent a firing emoji and started typing quickly on my phone keyboard. Evelyn, I flirted with Matthew? Did I sleep with him or kiss him? Eating a meal with someone is considered flirting? When you eat in the cafeteria, are you flirting with thousands of people at the same time? You're so amazing, can you handle it? Evelyn, I'm a gold digger? I get millions of dollars in allowance every month. Whose money am I digging for, the god of wealth? My jewelry was all bought by my mom. So what if I'm supported by my mom? Why? Can't your families afford these things? Hundreds of thousands of dollars is a lot? Really? Evelyn. As for Daniel, he wears my clothes and uses my money, and I have all the transaction records. You're all university students, and you don't understand anything, and you start to criticize. Does it make you feel superior? Or do you usually feel so insignificant? I know you're stupid, but I didn't know you were this stupid. Did you leave your brain behind when you finished the college entrance exam? With a burst of machine gun-like messages, Amelia, who was cleaning in the kitchen, came out and gave me a thumbs up. Evelyn, you're so good at scolding people. Amelia looked at me with admiration but was still worried. But there are so many of them. In this world, it's not always about who has more people. My phone vibrated again, and Grace at me in the school group chat. Grace, Evelyn, millions of dollars in allowance? You're so full of it. What does your mom do? Does she do the same thing as you? I replied directly. What are you barking at? What does my mom do? Why do I need to report to you? Why don't you explain how your parents, who don't earn more than 100,000 yuan a month, can afford so many luxury goods? 2 years ago, Ms. Matthew donated 50 million yuan, and the school hasn't listed the specific allocation of funds yet. Could the money you've been spending come from that donation? Grace didn't reply for a long time, and after a while, a message from Grace popped up on WeChat. Grace, Evelyn, you're done. I'll ask my dad to expel you. I sneered. Reason? Grace, of course it's for your bad behavior, not only being a mistress but also flirting with others. I said, okay, let's wait and see. 8. The next day, at my mom's strong suggestion, I got into her red sports car. After driving around the campus, my mom parked at the activity plaza. 1. It was crowded, and 2. Grace was there. As soon as my wealthy mom got out of the car, Grace immediately came over with a joyful expression. Aunt Matthew, why are you here? My dad said he would find a weekend to visit you. My mom's donation of 50 million to the school had caused a sensation throughout the entire school, and as the principal's daughter, Grace had naturally met her. Now seeing my wealthy mom was like seeing a walking money machine. Really? You're both very busy, so there's no need to trouble you. My mom snorted. Grace was immediately stunned, not understanding why she had offended the wealthy heiress in front of her. Then she saw me getting out of the car and her eyes widened. You! I didn't give her a chance to speak, and immediately wrapped my arm around my wealthy mom's. Mom, you didn't wait for me. As soon as I said that, everyone present was shocked. I even heard them gasp. Wow, she's Charlotte's daughter? They have the same last name. How come I didn't realize it before? No wonder she said she gets millions of dollars in allowance. She really does. Who the hell said bad things about Evelyn? Can I still go lick her boots now? The discussions around me were buzzing, and Grace's face turned pale, looking at me incredulously. You? I didn't give her a chance to speak, and immediately wrapped my arm around my wealthy mom's. Mom, you didn't wait for me. As soon as I said that, everyone present was shocked. I even heard them gasp. Wow, she's Charlotte's daughter? They have the same last name. How come I didn't realize it before? No wonder she said she gets millions of dollars in allowance. She really does. Who the hell said bad things about Evelyn? Can I still go lick her boots now? The discussions around me were buzzing, and Grace's face turned pale, looking at me incredulously. You? Evelyn, is this the person you were talking about? My wealthy mom looked Grace up and down. Grace glared at me resentfully, and then put on a gentle expression towards my mom. Aunt, just call me Grace. You're wearing quite a few brand names. That necklace must cost hundreds of thousands, right? My mom said indifferently. The surrounding people looked at her with even more suspicion and disgust. If Grace was simply rich, they wouldn't care. But if this money was supposed to be used for school construction, or to reduce scholarships for excellent students, then it was a different matter. This whip had to land on them before they would feel the pain. Seeing Grace's changing expression, my wealthy mom smiled warmly. Our family is quite wealthy. Oh, I'm so happy or unhappy. I always want to buy nice things for my precious daughter. I didn't expect that in the eyes of others, it would turn out that my daughter was being kept. The color completely drained from Grace's face, and she stared at my mom speechless. It's also quite funny, isn't it? My daughter Charlotte needs to be kept? She can have anything she wants with just a word. My mom continued to stab at Grace's heart. Grace's smile almost froze. Aunt, you have the wrong idea. I just saw Evelyn being too close to other men, and I thought she was young and didn't know any better, so Other men? My mom asked back. Who? Just Director Matthew. Are you talking about me? My dad walked slowly towards us from the side, naturally putting his arm around my mom's shoulder, his face gentle. I also obediently called out, Dad. The surrounding people were once again shocked. Wow, what a shocking revelation. I knew Matthew was married, but I didn't expect it to be to the daughter of a wealthy family. Damn, what a combination. Evelyn is so low-key. She never mentioned that her mother is a wealthy businesswoman, and her father is a famous director. On the other hand, Grace, relying on her father being the principal, thought she could do whatever she wanted. That's right, she wears necklaces worth hundreds of thousands. Isn't that normal? Grace's parents are both teachers. How can they afford so many luxury goods? Could it be that they embezzled the 50 million that Charlotte donated 2 years ago? I don't believe they didn't. Grace's face was almost beyond repair, and I watched her with a slight smile. Do you need me to show you our family registry? No, no need. Grace, under the suspicious eyes of everyone, could no longer bear it and ran away. 9. That day, public opinion took a complete turn. People who had once fawned over me came crawling back. But I only wanted to spend time with Amelia. Grace was suspended. Her malicious rumors about classmates, including the ones she'd spread about me, had been exposed. The entire school turned against her. Watching the scandal unfold, I couldn't help but smile. Grace, finally you've tasted the bitterness of being scorned. 10. That weekend, I visited my parents. They looked 10 years older, but their eyes lit up with hope when they realized I was their daughter. Perhaps it was the bond of blood, but they accepted the truth easily. Honey, as long as you're alive, that's all that matters to us. Mom wiped away her tears and grabbed my hand. I know your status has changed, but don't do anything wrong. I was startled. Mom, what do you mean? Mom sighed. A month ago, your dad and I received a $10 million transfer. We didn't dare touch it, so we reported it to the police. Now that I see you, I finally know where the money came from. My pupils dilated. Evelyn had sent that money to my parents. Fragments of that night's memory flooded back. No, I must have overlooked something. I took a deep breath. Early July, in the school building, I was assaulted, and Charlotte and Daniel were there. Right, Daniel? Evelyn, I knew. Before Daniel could finish, I punched him hard. What did you do on the night of July 5th? Daniel's face flashed with panic. He shook his head quickly. Didn't we have a date that night? We left after that. I pressed closer to Daniel, my fingers around his neck. Daniel, do you remember Isabella? Daniel's eyes widened in disbelief. Evelyn, why are you bringing up that woman again? Didn't we agree to never? Tell me. My fingers trembled as I looked at him. Or I have 100 ways to make your life miserable. If it were before, Daniel would have scoffed. But now, my identity was enough to intimidate him. His lips trembled as he slowly told me everything that happened that day. I listened carefully, hatred growing in my eyes. It turned out that Daniel and Evelyn hadn't been on a date that day. They had been breaking up. After the breakup, Daniel had seen a sneaky Grace outside the school building. Out of curiosity, Daniel found me unconscious in the storage room after being drugged. In an instant, Daniel's evil thoughts arose. All his anger from the breakup was vented on me, an innocent person. Later, by chance, Daniel threatened Grace for money, but Evelyn overheard. Feeling guilty and ashamed, she went to confront Daniel, but he stabbed her in the heart with every word. Evelyn, we've been dating for so long, and I was planning to sleep with you that night. Who knew you would run away? I can't help it. There was someone there, and I took advantage of the situation. I thought this woman was a slut, so I just slept with her. Who knew she was a virgin? Actually, you're also an accomplice. If you hadn't asked me to meet you there, I wouldn't have done anything to Isabella. Evelyn, you're also guilty. Word by word, he pushed the beautiful and gentle Evelyn into an endless abyss. She thought she was guilty, a heinous sinner. Finally, one night, she chose to end her life to punish herself. 11. I handed the recording to the police with tears in my eyes. Soon, Daniel and Grace were sentenced to prison for attempted murder. And Grace's father, the school principal, was found guilty of embezzlement and bribery. He joined his beloved daughter behind bars. After that, I was depressed for a long time. If Grace and Daniel represented the ultimate evil, then Evelyn was pure goodness. Neither she nor I should have been destroyed by those two demons. 12. God gave me a chance to meet Evelyn. In my dream, I saw the kind and beautiful girl smiling at me. It's great that you're alive, she said. My tears couldn't stop. I went forward and hugged her, my voice choked. It wasn't your fault, Evelyn. You're a good person, better than anyone. Actually, even if Daniel hadn't done it that day, someone else would have. From the moment I was drugged, it was destined. I couldn't escape. Evelyn patted my shoulder and smiled at me. I'm not so good. I told God that if you can't find out how I died, or help me punish the bad guys, I won't give you this body. I laughed. You can take it back anytime. Oh, I'm just kidding. I committed suicide, so I can't go back. Evelyn touched my head. But I'm about to be reincarnated. I've already told them over there that I want to be born into a wealthy family next time. No worse than you. Now I'm giving you a brand new life, so you have to live well." "I will," I said. "I will live better than anyone, with her part of me,